Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eggs. Today's guest is Tony Carlston. Tony is a Vancouver, Washington-based businessman, entrepreneur, all-around interesting cat. He's the CEO of Best Day of My Life and founder of Cutco Closing Gifts with more than $100 million in sales. He also founded Branding Tools, Inc. and a number of other things, so we'd like to welcome to the show, Tony. How are you, man?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. It's funny. I was doing a little research on you, and I saw Cutco, and I was like, "Ooh, I used to sell for those guys." Back in high school, I replied to an ad in the newspaper, and went and sat through a presentation, and ended up buying a salesman's kit, and I ended up being my only customer because I didn't sell a single knife after that. I gave the salesman kit to my mom for Christmas. But
that's a good gift.
Yeah, it was. She liked it, except that all the handles were different colors because they give the white handles and the black handles and all the other stuff. But I got to say, those Cutco knives are pretty darn nice. She sure likes them.
Oh, I'm glad you like them. That's awesome.
So cool. Well, tell us a little bit about your background. So maybe you got your start selling these knives from Cutco door to door. Can you just tell us a little bit about your life, how you got started, and how you got to where you are today?
Awesome, sure. So I started selling Cutco my senior year of high school. I'd always been that kid that was an entrepreneur, whether it was mowing lawns or washing cars or painting house numbers on the curbs. And so I started selling Cutco, as we're going to talk about at the time, and I quit Taco Bell immediately. And I basically followed their program, and it works a lot like real estate works. You start with your sphere, you practice on them, you get referrals, you go one at a time. And my senior year of high school, I made like $45,000 selling Cutco. And when you're 17 and have no bills, might as well have been $100 million. I felt like I was on top of the world. I just kept selling. And I went into the Cutco management program. I ran a top office. But the main problem I had with the Cutco product is when people bought it, they never needed it again.
I know, it's too darn good.
It is. And when you're a sales guy, that's hard because it's hard to build repeat business aside from some gifts or adding on to a set because the stuff never goes bad. And if it does, we just replace it. So there was this kid in Ohio selling some Cutco to builders with their logos engraved on as gifts. So I started doing that a little bit here. And then I started selling it to realtors and loan officers. And within 18 months, my sales were double the number 2 rep in the company because my clients were reordering when they're running out of their closing gifts. At that point, I decided I was onto something, and I would put together like a little Tony Robbins kit that I could sell to other top reps because everyone was very interested in whatever I was doing. And right before I shipped it, the company got a hold of me and said, "Hey, why don't you hold off and let's meet, let's see if we can team up." So they flew the head of marketing out. We spent a few days. Then I flew back out to Cutco and spent a few days there. And we started with a real light partnership. At the same time, they decided to take a step away from the engraving business. So they said, "We'd like you to grow this engraving program, and we're going to take a step away from the engraving business." It was not the best two things at the same time. So I had my stepdad retire from American Steel and start engraving just my stuff in his garage. And the program launched and started really getting some traction. And these other reps also needed engraving services. So we started engraving for them. And Branding Tools was born at that point. And the program continued to grow, and it got up to 4 engraving machines and 9 employees. And my stepdad said, "I did not sign up for this."
Get it out of my garage.
So I bought him out. We moved into our first space at headquarters. And over the last 12 years, have really been lucky enough to grow the program to 170 sales reps that are involved in one way or another, coast to coast. And we've done over 100 million in sales. And now Branding Tools has just under 50 employees. We're in a 12,000 square foot facility. We have 18 engraving machines. We engrave about 1,200 knives a day. And the business has grown since. And we are now the largest closing gift company in North America.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. We serve tons and tons of realtors and loan officers all over the country, and they buy Cutco as a closing gift, and they give it out to the people when they sell houses, and it certainly beats the basket or gift card that's gone in a week or two.
Yeah, so the realtors and the loan officers can order directly from you, and you engrave it and send it to them.
Exactly. We usually sell them a 5 or 6 month supply of gifts, and then we engrave them all at once, ship it to them, and we bill them out over the 5 or 6 months. Makes it an easy system in their business, and it's a non-consumable, so they really like it. And then my other company, how that came to be, my top rep of all time, Adam, he called me basically 5 years ago, and he's just general conversation. We speak most days, and he said, "Hey, how's your day?" And I just said, "Oh, best day of my life," just being a smart aleck. And he just liked it. So he just started saying that phrase when people would ask him how his day was. And his girlfriend at the time decided to go to like a t-shirt shop and put that saying on a t-shirt, "Best day of my life," for him and 2 of his buddies, his 2 roommates. And they started wearing these shirts out, and they get such a fun response. People are like, "Well, what is today? Is today you get married today? Like, why is it the best day of your life? Or is that just the way you live?" And then people start asking them the entrepreneurial question of, "Hey, well, where did I get one? I want a best day of my life shirt." And they didn't have any shirts because they weren't a company or anything. So they said, "Well, let's look into it." So they looked into it, and they were able to see that the trademark was available. And they got the trademark. And funny enough, they bought the URL, bestdayofmylife.com, on GoDaddy for like $30.
Oh my God.
You would think that'd be taken.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing to me, actually. I'm surprised it was available.
Crazy. So they did an Indiegogo crowdfunding, and they sold $10,000 of shirts in 5 days. People love the concept. And they printed in the back of the shirt, wear a shirt, have the best day of your life, take pictures, share with us on Facebook or Instagram. So just in 5 days, they got over 2,000 Instagram followers, sold 10,000 worth of product. People loved it. And then they shipped all that product, and people wanted to keep buying. There were 5 owners at the time. One's a grad student, one's an entrepreneur that is doing other things, one's in school, one's just in management with Cutco. And there's no one really steering the ship, and people were wanting to buy product, but they didn't have product to sell. They're running out of a shed in one of the guys' backyards, and they just kind of let the thing sit. And of course, I got wind of this. I'm like, "I love this. Just sell it to me. I'll run it." And they said, "No, we're going to do it soon." And after 4 years, they finally just said, "You know what? Just buy it. Just you spread us check. You can have it." So I bought it from them, and we relaunched about 6 months ago, and it's doing phenomenally well. You know, people really wear the product for one of 2 reasons. Some people are just positive, right? It's hard to have a bad day when you go out wearing something that says "best day of my life." You're really setting your intention. And then other people wear it because they have a major event. Maybe they got married. Maybe they had a baby. Maybe they went skydiving. Like when you go to buy a motorcycle in Portland, you get a custom one we co-branded for them that says "Best Day of My Life" in their font in red and black, and it has Ducati on the sleeve and Motorcourse on the other sleeve, and that's the day you get your motorcycle. So anyways, that's been the best day of my life, and now, you know, that's relaunching and doing super well and great, gaining traction. And so in a nutshell, that's been my professional story over the last 20 years.
Okay, so when did you first get started with Cutco? What year was that?
1998.
1990. That's about the same time that I went through the thing.
And Mike is a Washington guy too.
I was in Tacoma,
so
doing that.
So I don't know. Cutco must have been popular out there. I didn't know him that well, but
yeah. So how long did you do like the door-to-door sales before you kind of got involved with the engraving portion of it?
Oh, quite a while. I did in-home residential sales for approximately 4 years, and then I went into Cutco management for 2 years. I hired a big recruiting office like the one you would have interviewed in, hired about 600 kids that sold under me. And then after that, got into was doing closing gifts for about 2 years, and then it became a national program, and it's been 12 years since then. Okay.
So can you talk about just the sales process and how it helped you later on in life, and just being able to, because I did the Cutco thing for a little while. I wasn't really ready to do the door-to-door sales, but when I lived in Phoenix, I actually did door-to-door sales for auto glass, and Ryan went with me a few times on the road. He was down there visiting and didn't have anything to do, so I just took him to work with me. But I think that just the sales knowledge and being able to just walk up to someone and be their friend and just talk to them and relate to them helps out a lot. And I think I just having that 1.5 years, 2 years experience just going door to door and meeting 100 different people a day, good or bad, really helped me now down the road.
Well, and I might add to that too. Like, did you come by sales naturally? Were you already sort of an extrovert and good at that? Like in my life, I run an ad agency. I've spent my whole life sitting behind a computer doing design work. And so for me, my natural inclination would not be to go door to door. And so I just wonder, in addition to everything Mike just asked, if there's sort of if this is something born in you or if there's some tangible skill that you learned over time that maybe you could share with our listeners.
Sure. So a couple of answers. First, Cutco isn't traditional door-to-door sales. Door-to-door is more like you're walking down the street, banging on strangers' doors, you're hoping you'll get a hit, right?
The vacuum salesman guy.
Yeah, Cutco's more of a by appointment thing. So you start with people you get referrals, you call them, you book appointments, you go see them, get referrals, repeat. So more like real estate. But aside from any of that, I'll say that it's invaluable experience to work with people. Unless you're going to work in a factory, chances are you're going to be working with people. And what's great about sales is it teaches you so many skill sets in terms of working with people, because even if you're not in sales long term, you're going to be working with people even in your personal life. Being able to read people's facial expressions, being able to have good dialogue, being able to handle rejection, right? There's so many people that have such a hard time with that. So in my life, I've been driven by the opportunity of sales. I wouldn't find myself before that really. I've always been sales, but I like the upside basically. I didn't like the equation of trading time for money because we only have so much time. That doesn't really work. So that being said, I find I'm going to make all my kids go through the program. 2 of them have done it so far because the reality is it is universally applicable. We deal with people day in and day out, and the better you are dealing with people, the easier life tends to be. I'll also say that sales at its essence is just transferring enthusiasm, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one party excited about something, transferring it to another party. So if you're excited about something, most people are in one way or another somehow related to sales. So sometimes they don't even know they're selling things. They're just telling their friend about a restaurant. They're just talking about a different car they just got. They're just whatever. But that inherently is sales, because once you hear about it, you're excited about it, more likely to act on it.
Well,
and there's different facets of that, of course, but yeah.
I remember sitting through the pitch, or not the pitch, but the training class for the first night for the Cutco thing, and they walked through what a normal presentation would be like. And one of the things that you did was with the spatula knife, and you played a tune on it. And that, to me, I still remember it. It was just the coolest. I don't know if that's like just the guy that I was working with, but it stands out to this day as just the coolest thing ever. Like I would have bought the knives just for that one thing, just because it's not going to break and you can play music with it.
So before we jump to the next topic, though, I wondered if you mentioned something that is sort of, I don't know, a key thing. It's come up a lot on this show lately, and it's having that realization that there's a problem with, fundamental issue with trading time for money. I think so many people are quick to think about their life in terms of hours. Everybody gets minimum wage and we're paid by the hour, and you work at, in retail or whatever, and you're paid by the hour. I think it's something that we're sort of, I don't know why it's sort of the natural way, but for the longest time, everybody's been paid by the hour. So I think everyone's kind of in that mindset now. A lot of people that we've had on this show recently have been talking about this also, and that they had sort of this aha moment when they realized, wait a minute, we have finite time on this planet. Like, we can't spend it all or charge for the hour. I mean, we could never survive. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, maybe that moment when you realized that was it and how you transitioned out of making money by the hour.
Sure. So I was probably 14, and I went out and I made this little jig, and I was going to try to paint house numbers on the curbs because it's better. The fire truck can see your house. You can do it $5 a house, and that only takes maybe 30 seconds to put it down. Now, I went out in one day, and I made $350 doing this.
As a 14-year-old kid. Yeah.
And my expenses I had was maybe $50 in paint, whatever. And I was like, gosh, that seems to be a far better, I didn't even know what I didn't know, but it seems to be a better equation. So what I learned later, and what becomes apparent to me, is that you really get paid for the value you bring to the marketplace, period. So what I mean by that is if you could fill a stadium full of people, like let's say LeBron James, and people would buy products because you endorse them, they would pay you just the same as they pay him, and vice versa. So the market really determines what your value is. Now, sometimes they determine what it is in an hourly rate, and people sign up for that. They say, you bring this amount of value to the marketplace, and that's what this job pays, and this is what you'll be paid. We're going to trade you time for money. The company decides it for you. Or you as an individual can decide it for yourself. And if you can tie your income to a result that is scalable and doesn't require time to scale, meaning to sell twice as much, you don't have to work twice as hard. That's what I mean. When you can figure out that equation, and sales is an easy way to do that, or a business that you scale up, or something that you can leverage through other people. That's what delegation is, right? Multiplying time through other people. When that's now the terms you get to play in, your world's different. The richest guy and the poorest guy in the world have the exact same amount of time. Jeff Bezos is not the richest guy in the world because he's out taping up boxes in the Amazon warehouse, right? He has hundreds of thousands of employees that he's leveraged through. So I think that people have to think better if they want to get a different result. Everybody wants to be rich, but there's too much risk for a lot of people to get outside of what society tells them is normal, right? Because it's weird. Let me tell you what, I never went to a day of college in my life. I was like, information's everywhere. I planned on going, and I just made more money my senior year of high school than starting pay out of college. Doesn't make any sense. My mom was like mortified for 2 years.
I know.
Because she's like, haven't you sold knives to everyone yet? I don't get it. And I'm like, well, Mom, Bill Gates still sells things to people. He seems to be doing okay. I don't get that either, but it's kind of how it works. And the reality is when you change the metric to result equals X, and you can scale the metric, that's when life gets exciting. Because it's not exciting even when you become successful if you're still tied to time. I have a lot of wealthy friends, for example, in like Ferrari Club, who never figured that out. They grinded for so long. Now they're rich beyond their wildest dreams, but they still grind every day and they're not loving it. And that's not the goal either. The goal is to live the life you want to live, in my opinion. Now, income is a avenue and tool to do that, but it's the mindset of scaling for other people, getting your ego out of the way, and doing something different, because trading time for money is a super scary equation because you only have so much time. That's heavily reliant on you. And if I show up here today or not, I still have 18 machines out here engraving knives for me that I'm making money off of. Yeah. Right. So it's just a different way of looking at things. It's not for everyone. A lot of people are too scared to do anything except trade time for money and make someone else rich. And that's okay too. The world needs soldiers, and there's plenty of them. But that doesn't have to be you if you're listening today. You can do something different.
Yeah, that's great.
It's exciting.
Cool. Well, hey, just another thing that you mentioned is one of the big things you have to do is get your ego out of the way. Do you have any insight, or how did you learn that? Like, so for example, I mean, we have heard a number of different people say stuff to that effect, this idea that you've got to just basically get out of your own way. But I mean, did you have some training? Did you have mentorship early on? How did you learn, to do that outside of just setting your mind to it? Or is that it? Is that the secret?
Well, you get humbled when you reach the next level and still understand that you're not where you want to be and have so much to learn. There is no arrival in personal development or business. So I've had great mentors, great people that are further along in the journey than me, that shorten the learning span. And the number one thing I see out there that is the problem with entrepreneurship is people think that they are the answer, right? So then they don't delegate. And then their business starts thriving, which just means they have to work harder. And they're doing great things and maybe even making some money, but they won't let anything out of their own hands because their ego says no one can do it as well as them. And when you change that narrative to, hey, you know what, I can teach someone else to do this better than me that won't cut any of the corners I will naturally cut. And when you change the narrative to that, then you become unlimitedly powerful because you can multiply your hours by leveraging other people. And that's when everything changes. So, I'd say to answer your question roundabout way, it's both. It's doing all the personal development stuff. It's doing the Tony Robbins stuff. It's doing the Jim Rohn stuff because that stuff's true and good and real. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People 101. That book is still relevant today. There's an entire chapter on smiling, right? That's good stuff. And then at the same time, knowing that you don't know everything. There's so much stuff I don't even know I don't know, right? It's a whole other level of not knowing stuff. And then trying to find some people that are just a little further along in the game than you in different areas of expertise. Now, I remember when the president of Cutco came out and toured branding tools, and he wandered through. He's like, how did you figure out how to do all of this? I'm like, I did. We just screwed up everything enough and asked enough questions till you figured it out. And I think it's having that grit that's also super important, because a lot of people are just frankly weak, and they have one setback and they say, this isn't for me. Instead of asking themselves a better set of questions of, well, how can I make this work? Who could I ask that can help me make this work? And continuing to push forward instead of just giving up.
So I have a two-part question here. I've been recently listening to a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and he kind of goes off in one of the chapters about systems and processes for training your employees and creating, because, you know, lots of people don't want to give up their role because they're afraid that the people are going to go and ruin the business that they've started, and they're going to, you know, lose customers. Can you talk about creating systems and processes for in your business for sales and engraving and everything? And then can we step back a little bit too and talk about when you first started doing the engraving for the real estate agents and the loan officers? How did you go about networking with them and getting them into your group, and how did you do it so fast? Because if you go from just lowest or whatever to second in the company just by doing the engravings and selling to the real estate guys, you must have had some sort of secret. You know what I mean? Because I don't think LinkedIn was around back then.
You know what? I don't even know if I'm on LinkedIn now. It might be. Actually, I am. They made me do that, but I've never been on that website in my life.
Okay.
So to answer your second question first, because it's freshest in my mind, my mousetrap was simply better. That's it. When you're out selling Cutco to people that didn't even know they were buying knives today, that's much harder than people that are already buying closing gifts and we're rediverting funds. In addition, that they give them out and then they need more. It's just a better sales process. That's what it really comes down to.
So did you go like just to each agency in the area and say, here's my product, here's what I'm doing?
Exactly.
Okay.
What I would do is I would go out and I'd speak at the real estate office team meeting. I'd give a 6-minute pitch, and then I would get cards of people that are interested, and I'd sit down and do one-on-one appointments with them, and that's what we did. Okay. And then you get involved in the Realtor Association. You go where realtors are, training classes, golf tournaments, network, things like that. But realtors love getting together, and they're getting together all the time for one reason or another. And then you meet people. You tell them what you do. They like it. They have you in their office meeting, you pitch it, and then only the people that are interested get on board. And then once you have that data, then you put it in a database, you can take the reorder callbacks and all the rest. About 70% of our business is past clients that are reordering. So building that back-end system, that starts with a bunch of files on a desk, and then it starts with ACT. And then after that, we had a database built that's specific for us. And then the follow-up calls, the email marketing, the texting, the happy client, the gold group, the email marketing, all of that stuff comes later, right? So, but on the front end, it's just getting out there. It's just pounding the pavement. Like, go find the realtors. Everybody knows a realtor. You just ask them, who do you know is a realtor or lender? You call them. You go meet with them. You tell them what you do. They like it or don't. Doesn't matter. You get into their office meeting. The manager's happy to have you in for 6 minutes. It's not a big ask, right? And then you get in there, you do your thing, and then a certain percentage of those people are interested. But because what we do is so much more specific than a consumable like a basket or a gift card, agents very much resonate to it.
Well, the one thing that stands out about your product, it's in their drawer. They use it every day. And it's such a good knife, they want to keep using it. It's essentially, it's a business card that just shows itself every day.
Absolutely. And no one ever gets rid of any knives, let alone good knives.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So
yeah.
So going back to the system part of it, as far as like training and getting your employees to, he talks about like the McDonald's theory, like how they created the system and everything is just, has to be done a certain way and how it can just grow a business exponentially and leveraging, your employees to represent you and to, be a good representation. Is there, I'm sure with your business and with Cutco, they have a training program and everything. Yeah. Can you extrapolate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, I mean, it really comes down to manuals and following the path that's already been proven, right? So in our business, engraving, we're a lot of years into this. We have manuals for everything, right? And most everyone in the company is cross-trained. So if somebody's sick, if someone dies tomorrow, the company can run fluidly and nobody is freaking out. So in fact, my head manager's book on her desk is, "I'm dead, what's next?" And it shows every single thing we do, every system. Documentation is so important because you have to have scripts in terms of the sales piece. You have to have systems inside of the processing piece. You have to know the method to do things, and then also being open to revising those and making them better. So for us, when we bring someone new in, we train them on the system, right? We let them try it, and then we see the results, and then we monitor them. Depends on the department. So like in our reorder system, they'll call, and we'll record a bunch of calls. I'll listen to them. We do the 1-minute manager. We sit down. We have a quick talk. This you could do better. This you could do worse. This, that, the other thing. And then we let them do it again. And then the results come. The results come. They're doing it right. It doesn't. They're not, because it's a system. And then we monitor it. But we monitor all the metrics. We have to know the numbers, because otherwise we're going on feelings. And every bad decision I've ever made, I thought was a good idea at the time. I can't go on my feelings. I have to go on real data, real numbers. But also not getting so over the top where you lose the purpose of what you're doing. But so for engraving, we have to know how many engravings we got to eat out of each engraving tip, right? Because if I have this engraver sit down and he should get 65 engravings out of a tip and he gets 15, you scale that over our business, there's a big difference to the bottom line because of that. So every metric that can be monitored should be monitored, from the sales process to the engraving process to the customer follow-up process. And when that's all done properly, it runs really well. And then when you bring new people in, you teach them your process, you let them do it, you go in, you watch them, or you record them, you look at their numbers, their data, you look at their results, you take their feedback, you revise the process, and then it's just teaching people systems. And that's what works.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually just, this last weekend, I was down in Phoenix with my dad, and he's diabetic, and he went golfing with my uncle the other day, and throughout the day, they had to do a lot of walking. He's a little older and a little bit out of shape, and he didn't check his blood sugar and assumed that his blood sugar was low when really it was high, and then he actually drank a soda trying to compensate for the being low, and then it spiked his blood sugar up even higher. And the first thing I thought was, the metrics thought was like, why wouldn't you just check to see where you're sitting at first and then compensate? It's just common sense. If you look at the numbers and you base off of what's actually happening, you know how to counteract and how to go from there. And I just kind of thought of that as you were saying that. So it's kind of a no-brainer. If you just got to pay attention, really.
Well, and that's what's so interesting. So many people are quick to trust their gut on everything. I mean, there's even idioms in our culture about trusting your gut. And, I think your gut can get you a certain, distance. I mean, obviously, you can have some intuition about things, but it seems like, especially in society today, so many people are going strictly off emotion. And to your point, really, you've got to follow the data, and that requires a certain amount of discipline.
And that relates to your personal life too, in terms of your level of gratitude and your perspective. If you make $30,000 a year, you're in the top 1% on the planet. And people miss that. Like, you turn on your sink today, it worked. Like, that's pretty awesome. A lot of people would die for that.
Yeah.
And we complain about how thick the icing is on the cake here, not even the cake and eat it too. And the reality is, when you have perspective and you look at numbers and you look at metrics, it's easier to be grateful. And then when you focus on the gratitude, you get better results because you're in a better headspace. I don't trust my gut with anything because it has been wrong so many times. And it's just better to look at numbers and then have another person even that looks at numbers give you their perspective on this. It's like one of my kids come to me and they're fighting, and one tells me this horrific story. I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. Do I believe it? Nah, maybe. It doesn't even matter. Let me hear the other side, and then I'll work it out, right? Because it's all based on their perspective, even if it's the same set of events.
Yeah. That's That's very true. And maybe that's kind of why the best day of my life thing is working so good. You just got to have a positive perspective. So switching from from Cutco and the knives to the best day of my life, how long have you been doing that, or since you've bought it? And what have you done for marketing? What have you done to build the business?
So I bought it about 6 months ago. We've done a lot of things. We've done podcasts, so like we are doing today. We've done about a dozen podcasts. We've done co-branding with a variety of companies, including Cutco, for events and things. We've done private label, which we never knew we were going to get into, but people want us to just make their garments in general because we have good garments and we can print it with their info. We're in 15 stores now. We did an apparel show in Las Vegas and we got picked up by 15 stores. We got picked up by a college called Marquette in Wisconsin, so we do co-branding with them. We've done Facebook ads. We've done Instagram ads. Our Instagram following's grown up to like 6,500 now because people buy it and post, and it self-perpetuates in that way. We believe in purchasing with a purpose. So 10% of all of our proceeds go to Front Row Foundation. It puts critically ill people in the front row of an event of their choice. So that's a big motivator for a lot of people. We also work the charity angle in general. So if you have a charity, you can get a hold of us and use this as a tool, and people can buy it with a code, and then 50% of the sale will go right back to your charity. So Make-A-Wish in Portland, for example, got on board with that. And then we also did Rose Fest just to test it, which is a big carnival thing in Portland here, a big event they do once a year. So we did Rose Fest and sold hundreds and hundreds of shirts. And we learned in that, for example, people want black shirts. We didn't have black. So now we got black. It's like 60% of our sales. Who knew? We're learning a lot and then launching new SKUs. And then, for example, with the wedding set, the number one hashtag best day of my life is people's wedding.
Huh.
And
yeah.
So we came up with a wedding set that people wear the day they're getting ready for their wedding, right? And then baby onesies. We came out with that because best day of your life, the day you bring home a new baby. So we're learning as we go. It's kind of fun in this part of the business because we don't even know what we don't know. I don't have any background in apparel, but I know some things about business. So we're testing things. We're working on things. We had a PR company. We got featured in several magazines. We're going to be in Elle coming up. We're testing different things to find the vein. That's really what we're doing. And then once we can dial in on those metrics in terms of what works, then we funnel tons of money into it and drive it as much as we can. So, like I say, we're in the infancy stages of it. We do print on super high quality products, which is important. We use Bella Canvas blanks for our tees, which are top quality, Toltex for our hoodies, which are fleece and soft inside. So people love our products and they resonate with the brand. Positivity is really important to people, a lot of people, and they buy it for events. So people go and they buy it on our website often. That's the most common place people find it, which is bestdayofmylife.com. And then they tag us at bestdayofmylife.com on Facebook or Instagram. But I'm not exactly sure where the big play will be, but my sense is wedding product for sure. People like it just for activewear, and then launching new SKUs and colors and going from there. But I'm not sure exactly, but we are selling a ton of it, and people really like the product and they resonate with it, and it's the number one conversation starter I've ever had in terms of apparel. You get asked more about it and are able to engage people in a very distracted world better than anything else. That everybody's got their face in their phone, and when you walk up to a cashier wearing something that says best day of my life, they commonly will say, oh, well, why? What's going on? They resonate. They'll say, I really like that.
So what's your first response when they ask that? What do you say?
When they ask, is today the best day of my life?
Yeah, why is it the best day of your life? I mean,
my answer to them is because that's how I live every day.
That's awesome.
Well, and that takes me back. I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned that, sort of the birth of the best day of my life was a little bit nonchalant or a little bit flippant. You kind of said the phrase to a friend and he sort of took it and ran with it. But I wondered, I mean, my gut anyway, not to be trusting my gut too much, but my gut is that, you probably say that every day. Like that was probably the kind of thing you say a lot. I know a number of people who, when you talk to them for the first time, or when you say, hey, how's it going? It's always, or, oh, I'm so busy, or something really negative or down. And then there's a handful of people who are like, better than ever, couldn't be better, that kind of thing. And I wondered if you could maybe speak a little bit from your experience as somebody who appears to be on the more positive side. just the importance of having that positive thing and sort of setting your intention with a phrase like that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's really whatever you're focusing on. I think people have great things going on in their lives and terrible things, and what you focus on is what you get. So if you are looking more at the positive side of things and trying to find the wins in everything and trying to find the happiness in everything, those people tend to be happier. Those people tend to have better lives. And that's how I try to focus on. There's plenty of negative out there. And I don't think putting your head in the sand is wise. I think it's fine to recognize that it exists, but at the same time, not dwell or focus on it. So when you go out there and you're wearing something that says best day of my life, I mean, what we really did is we copied the model Life is Good did, right? Life is Good's been around 20-some years. They do $100 million a year in sales, started by two positive guys in Boston just driving around a van selling shirts. And, positivity is important in terms of people want happiness, and it's hard to be happy if you're not somewhat positive. And it also has a lot to do for me about what I surround myself with, right? So I don't spend a lot of time watching TV or negative things. I try to spend my time around positive, happy people because that's what I want more of in life. So that's how I look at it anyways. But people's perspective, I find grumpy people exciting and funny too. So, but for the most part, I like positive people and being around people that are trying to see the good in life. Life is a blessing and exciting and fun. And people spend so much time just worried and upset and grumpy. And I just don't think it's a good way to live.
Yeah, agreed. I wondered too if you would sort of elaborate on this idea of purchasing with purpose. So in your guys' case, it has to do with charity, but I wonder too, buying things and being sort of intentional in the products you support and things like that. I wonder if you had any additional perspective or anything you could add to that idea of purchasing with purpose. I mean, outside of being a great slogan or tagline, I think it's a good thing also, just sort of in terms of general attitude or way to be.
Sure. I think people have a general need to contribute. And if they can purchase something, they're going to purchase anyways. And it's going to benefit somebody else outside of themselves. I think that helps them feel good. And it does actual good, right? You look what's been done with companies like Tom's and others. And people resonate towards that. Not everyone. Some people couldn't care less. But for some people, it's really important. No different than someone that's super health focused and want to know that their chickens were running around a field by themselves and they only eat those eggs. That's not important to everyone, but it's important to some people. So I think it's just finding what the motives are for your customer, right? And hitting as many as you can, because as that is important for some, it's not important for others. But for the people it is important to, those people are crazy positive. Those people are trying to find the good and give as much as good as they can to the world, in my opinion. Some people, it's just a nice benefit, but even at the Rose Fest, when people would come up and we'd share with them what Front Row Foundation does and how it takes critically ill people and puts them in the front row of an event of their choice. Some people were tears. They're I just want to give money to the charity. I don't even need to buy the shirt, just give all the money to the charity. That's just how they're wired. And it's just interesting to watch how that plays out.
Yeah. Cool. I wondered too, okay, so, and this is a little bit of a departure, but something that you've started to talk about or in having 50 employees or 50-ish employees at this time, maybe you can talk about it a little bit. I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about hiring people, finding talent, building a workforce. I know for a lot of companies and folks who want to scale, we've already talked a little bit about, pushing your ego aside and learning to delegate. I wondered if you could elaborate on, how you might find people or struggles that you've had to overcome in hiring, firing, and establishing a team that you could trust.
Sure. Great question. So some people we hire, from referrals from people internally. We hire a lot of our people off Craigslist, honestly. We put ads out. I put a simple barrier in place. When I place an ad, I say, I'd like you to send a handwritten cover letter of why I should hire you for this job. And that weeds out 98% of the replies.
It's funny how something simple like that gets rid of all the weeds.
It does. And the people that can simply follow directions are so much further along in the process. The reality is unemployment is super low. So people that don't have jobs right now, there's usually a reason, because there's lots of good jobs available. So finding that person in a bunch of people that you maybe wouldn't want to normally hire is challenging, but and then I personally one-on-one will do the second interview. So my department heads will interview them, and then I'll do the second interview. And working with people for 20 years, I get a good sense of them at that point. We've done personality testing in the past, but then we bring them on and let them watch the person do the position for a few days that's already doing the position. And then we test them and we see if they like it. And if they like it, we like it. And then we start training them. We see how trainable they are. That's really important. We have a lot of people that come in that are super skilled, but they don't listen, and that doesn't work. So, and then you just, it's a brutal process. Like, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get a prince. But at the same time, once you get people and you take care of them and you take care of your culture and they like working here, they stay. They stay. I mean, my first employee I've ever hired is still here. So we've lost lots of people over the years, but if you take care of your people and they're good and competent, they feel good about the job and the value they're providing, most of the time they stay. And then, of course, we have all of our systems and training we teach them in as well. But it's hard. Hiring is hard. Working with people is hard. But it's harder to sell your time for money. It's harder to be a slave to someone else, in my opinion. So it's hard, but not as hard as it could be.
Well, and it's certainly more rewarding, I suppose, than being the corporate shill or whatever.
So are most of your employees, are they mostly salespeople?
I have about 170 salespeople across the country, and then all my internal employees are not salespeople except for my call center, and I have 2 salespeople in there. Okay.
So for me, when I first started doing sales, I had a hard time with just the thought of a commission-only paycheck. But after doing it for a few weeks, because I didn't, like, I'm talking about the auto glass sales, because it was purely commission. But after doing it for like 2 or 3 weeks and realizing that you can go out and make $150, $200 a night. Some nights you strike out, but some nights you walk away with $300-$400. It's almost like gambling. I don't know why, but it's almost addicting. And I loved it and hated it at the same time. Can you? I don't know where my question's going with this, but I just wanted to bring that up because commission-based sales is tough, and knowing that it's up to you if you want to get a paycheck this week, and it's a driving factor. After a short period of time, I went from just being a regular sales guy to running a crew, and it's interesting to see which guys in the crew did well and which guys in the crew wouldn't last. And I usually could predict it just based on the first week. It takes a certain type of person to succeed in that industry.
And I think it's less the type of person, but how they view it. See, I viewed it exactly kind of the opposite of the way you did. To me, it's super scary that someone else is in charge of my pay. To me, that's terrifying because I don't trust anyone as much as I trust myself. So if there's a commission and they can teach me a system of how to make sales, God, that's exciting because then it's on me. And if I work twice as hard as the guy next to me, I make twice as much money. To me, what's scary is the people that work hourly jobs for 30 years, the company makes a shift and they're unemployed.
Yeah.
That to me is terrifying. So I like that I'm in charge of how much I make because I trust me way more than anyone else. So that's the way I looked at it. So it was never a scary thing for me. It was an exciting thing. It was an opportunity thing because I knew I would outwork whoever I'm working next to.
After the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was in the same mindset because I knew I could do it. I knew, there's always another house. There's always another person. I can just walk down the street and try again. But the first week or 2, I was like, man, I hope this works. I hope I can pay my bills with this. But it ended up being a really good job. And the only reason I moved was because family stuff came up and I had to go take care of some stuff. So if not, I'd probably still be doing it.
What I also like about sales is it's always different every day. I mean, even when you were doing windows, you were out hitting the pavement, wandering around, talking to people. To me, I have a real hard time sitting at a desk doing the same thing over and over and over again.
100%. Yeah.
I liked the variety of it, always.
So cool. Will you talk a little bit? So one of the things we've talked about a little bit and you sort of emphasized was the importance of process. I think that for a lot of people, especially solopreneurs and people like that who are trying to develop a new business, they do things the way they do things, but they never think in terms of process. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about maybe if you can take yourself back far enough to discuss establishing process and how to sort of go from a world where without process to one with it. And you may have sort of a different experience having come from a organization that was sort of in place and had process in place already. But in terms of your own business and things, what have you done to stay disciplined and ensure that you have process to run your company?
I think for me, it's mostly about testing things and seeing what works. And then when they do work, making that part of the process. So knowing you don't know all the answers, but you can find the answers if you ask the right questions. And then you need to document that stuff. And then once you document it, duplicate it, right? And really put it down in a binder or in a manual or something that you can refer to later, because otherwise you can't scale. Otherwise it becomes the telephone game and folklore in business of people passing information down. And for me, the process is important, and asking yourself different questions around how to think about the process. And put yourself in your customer's shoes. How would they feel about the process? How would that work? If I were them, how would I feel? How could I fix that? Right? And it's just asking yourself a good set of questions. And then once again, documenting it, putting it down, and then implementing it, teaching other people it, and then refining it as a better process becomes available.
So pretty much A/B testing for the most part. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I think that's all really good information. I also wondered, too, if you could elaborate on the importance of goal setting, or if you think it is important. I know a lot of people are quick to fly by the seat of their pants and maybe don't know where they're going. And I know that, like, I myself am notorious for not really setting targets, but I wonder if you could speak a little bit. I mean, as a sales guy, you're used to hitting targets and setting, at least sales goals. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the importance of goal setting in an entrepreneur's life or in sort of building a business.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in your camp, meaning I was never much for like sitting down and writing out my goals and whatever. I was more in I want to continue progressing forward, and those numbers, all metrics should continue to get better. So but I was never someone that was lazy. Like, I wanted to work, I wanted to grind, I wanted to grow it, and I had some financial goals and things. I had some automobile goals. But in terms of business goals, I didn't ever have like, oh, okay, I want to do this or I want to do that. I got to write it down and shoot for it and break it down. I think there's value in that exercise for a lot of people, for sure, especially for people that are less disciplined. For me, it's like people ask me now, what keeps you motivated? I don't even feel motivated. I just get up and keep pushing the ball forward because it's fun. So it's just different in terms of, focusing at a goal and trying to get there, which I think is important, especially if you're like a pilot or something, you're trying to get somewhere specific. And the idea of just progress and growth and doing great things and contributing more and moving the ball forward. So a little bit of abstract, a little bit of something definite is, I think, the right balance for me personally. But I'm not someone that's like sits down at the beginning of the year with my steno pad and starts working out what I need to hit for the year, whatever.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think that's a good perspective. I know a lot of the books and things, nowadays, especially, you have to be a certain way. If you want to be successful in business, you must follow this model. So I appreciate a couple things about you. First of all, that you don't have sort of a traditional education, that you didn't, go to university, become a business person through that traditional route, because I think there are a lot of people, especially in today's age, sort of society, that are maybe choosing less traditional routes, or not spending as much time in school as maybe previous generations did, and they're going right into entrepreneurial ventures. So I really appreciate that about you. And then the other thing too is just your honesty, because I think a lot of people are quick to say, well, of course, I'm always, I've got a notepad full of all my bullet points, and this is what I do every day. And then people like me or our listeners, try and follow that model and find out it's not sustainable, or, you can't get into the habits, and then it feels like a failure. So I think it's really refreshing to sort of hear the other side.
Yeah. I like the forward progress that you stated. I'm kind of the same way. I'm just a hard worker, and as long as I'm getting something done towards something that I'm working on, I feel good. I try to set goals, but usually I end up, 3-4 months beyond it by the time I actually hit it. But I'm just a hard worker as well. Speaking of goals, one of the questions on your sheets that you sent us is, what's the movement goal behind Best Day of My Life? Can you break that down for us? What do you mean by movement goal?
I think living with intent. of living your best day every day is the movement we want to push forward. I think when you wear the product, you get that response. When you set your intention, you get that response. And when enough people do that, things can change and things can progress in a positive way. And that is the goal behind the company. We want to continue to push positivity and goodness forward because it's a good way to be. And the world needs more of it. There's plenty of negative. And my hope is when millions of people are wearing the products, the world's a better place. Not just because I sell the products, but because of the message we're pushing forward.
Well, it just makes people smile. You know, I saw some of your shirts and jumped on your Facebook page, and I mean, I could imagine just rocking one of your shirts walking down the street, and I guarantee it's like the truck that has two front ends driving down the street. People are going to ask questions, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So we're starting to get a little bit long in the show, and as we start to wind down, you mentioned once quickly and then a second time. So you are in a Ferrari club, I think I heard. Bit of a automotive enthusiast, and you mentioned that you had like some vehicle goals. Let's talk cars for a minute. Tell us what you're into.
I've always liked cool cars. I have a Bentley four-door that I drive every day that I'm about to sell and buy either a newer one or like a Rolls Ghost. And I just love cars. It's my dad was into cars. I like cars. It's just cool. I have a Ferrari 599 that I drive when it's sunny. I have a cool motorcycle, a Ducati 959 when I drive, but it's warm and sunny. And I enjoy the art behind automobiles. I like driving fast. I like the sound. I like the smell. I like all of it. It's just everything about cars I like. And so
would you say that sort of feeding that fuel, like, was that something you were into as a child, and so that sort of maybe helped give you the motivation? Like, I know a lot of people, business people and stuff like that, they don't tend to really be in it for the money. You know, the more we talk to people, the more we find that, you know, the money comes, but that's not really our number one goal. Of course, money facilitates being able to buy the rolls. But I mean, obviously, it seems like you're trying to chase this childhood fantasy or this, you know, this thing that you love versus just doing it for the money.
Well, you know, the money is extremely important when you don't have any. Once you have some, it becomes less important because after a while you buy everything you've ever wanted and then you're still alive and you have other things that you realize are far more important than any of that. But that's all fun, right? So for me, my life, my kid, when I was a kid, my dad was into cars. I love cars. And it's just like one of my things. Some people are into bikes, some people are into whatever. But I just like cars. I always have. But, you know, I don't work for the money, but I also don't send any of it back. It's the best way to say it.
So on the note with the Ferrari Club, I can actually see that being a very good networking tool because not only are you're surrounded, the group of people that you're driving around with and networking with are going to be successful if they're driving a Ferrari. Are you able to kind of use that to your advantage?
100%. You meet a lot of interesting people in all types of clubs and organizations. But if you're driving a Ferrari, you got something that's different because very few people ever are in that world. And those people are super interesting. And by the way, what's interesting to me, I didn't even know this till I was in it. But you can join for like $150 a year and show up, and you don't even have to have a car. There's a lot of people in the club that don't have a car.
Just rent one for the day.
They like it. They just like being in the club. They find it interesting. They like cars. They like being around cars. They just can't afford it. So, you know, it's just a good networking thing. I've always enjoyed it. I like the people. And most of the people are super down to earth, calm, like entrepreneurs that have been doing a lot of them are older, right? So they're in their like 60s, 70s. They're just cool folks that are basically living out their childhood dream to have a cool sports car. And they pull it out of the garage twice a year and drive around the block. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun.
Well,
yeah, that's awesome. I am super jealous. So, but one of these days, maybe. So, I guess just to sort of wrap up, where can people find more information about you, Tony?
So you can find me at, sharpbrandingtools.com is if you're like a realtor or loan officer and you want to get some closing gifts, that's where you can find me there. But Best Day of My Life stuff, you can find at bestdayofmylife.com. If you use the discount code EGGS, you get 25% off.
There we go.
That's awesome. And we'll make sure to share that around too.
Yeah. And, you know, so pick yourself up some Best Day gear, use the code, get a discount. Help some people with front row and start rocking that gear, and you'll love you'll love the response you get. That's what I'll tell people. But you can find me. I'm not hard to find. I'll answer my phone. And yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for making the time, Tony. Any parting shots before we wrap this up?
Just thank you both. Thank you for putting out good content. Good content's important and it's useful. So thank you for taking the time and going through your mission, because you help a lot of people. So I appreciate it.
Well, to the same point, thank you for sharing it. Our show's only as good as the guests that are on it. And, a lot of this show has been a personal growth venture for us, but it's also, the joy of sharing it and seeing the positive effects we have on the people who listen to the show. So thanks so much for your time as a guest, just because it's key for making this show successful. Cool. So with that, we'll call that a wrap. You can find out more information about the show and catch this episode, eggscast.com. You can also find us iTunes and all those places. And follow us on YouTube. We're starting to do a live stream, so you can watch us talk for an hour. It's great. It's great. I'll try not to pick my nose. No guarantees. Yes. So cool. So on that note, thanks so much again, Tony, and really appreciate your time. And thanks to everybody who tuned in and listened throughout the show. And have a great week. We'll see you next time.